Hello everyone, Southern Mike here with Haunted Empath. I want to tell you a story about the time I purchased a home that was built in 1797. And shortly after moving in, I found that it was haunted. The home needed a lot of work, but what I found out that not all spirits want you to be doing work in the home in any kind of construction. I will show you pictures here of the home back in the day, 1797, and after the construction. I didn't want to change much other than put in air conditioning and heat and things that the home didn't have. I also did some research on the home. I went down to the Historical Society and was able to go through their books and found that there was a murder in the home in the early 1800s, which I was not aware of at the time of purchase, but it doesn't really matter. It's just part of the history. I located a news article about the home, which read that the man living there, the owner, and his wife had just went to bed. They put their gowns on, went to bed, and then there was a violent knocking on the front door, as the newspaper article reads. The man got up, went to the front door to see what all the commotion was about, and the news article just said that the man returned back inside the home after answering the front door, told his wife that he was dying. So it didn't explain why all of a sudden, just by answering the door, that he's now dying. The article read that the wife left, went to get help. And at that time, the house sat on 250 acres, but when I got it, it was only 3. So she had a ways to go to get help for her husband. And the article reads that when she got back home, her husband was already deceased. So the article doesn't say that the wife heard gunshots or anything like that. So it had to be something that was quiet. Maybe he was stabbed when he opened the door. That's just my guess, since nothing was mentioned about any gunshots. It was a large home. It was probably added on as years went by. It even had a summer kitchen with a fireplace that you could stand up inside of it. It was that large. I had to make one of the rooms my bedroom, and then I kind of closed off everything else to keep the heat in, because it still had the old windows and doors and all those things. But I soon found out that I wasn't alone in the house. I was in one of the back rooms doing some work when I heard someone walking, sounded like with boots. Of course, all the floors were wood, and I could hear exactly where they're at in the house from the footsteps. They were in the kitchen, and I could hear they were coming across the hallway, and they were coming toward the room I was in. So I quickly went to the door, and as the footprints, boot sounds were coming toward my door, I opened the door quickly, and no one was there, and I did not hear any more footsteps after that. That was the first encounter that I had, and then I knew that I was not alone in the house. Another time, I was upstairs doing some work, renovating, and I hear a woman, like she was at the back door, yelling, "Hello." It was very loud, and I thought, well, maybe it was the neighbor stopping by, just to see what was going on or say hello, because I hadn't met the neighbors. But like I said, it was like 3.5 acres, and it would be kind of strange for her just to walk to the house. So I yelled back. When she yelled hello, I yelled back hello. I didn't hear any reply. So I walked downstairs and went to the door, looked out, and there was no one around anywhere. So now I knew it was a male and a female spirit in the house. It wasn't a daily occurrence. I would probably say it was probably a weekly occurrence that something would happen and kind of remind you that you weren't alone. Another time I was upstairs and I hear the lady sound like the same voice as before downstairs actually yell my name. I heard, "Mike," clear as day, loud. And I responded, "Hello," from the top of the steps. Again, I went back downstairs and there was no one around. So at this point, I knew that they were aware of me and they actually knew my name. And one day I was sitting on the floor upstairs painting the door frame, and out of the corner of my eye I catch something going by the door pretty fast. It was like a dark shadow mist. It was just black, and it was just went down the hallway past the door that I had open and into another room. So I sat there looking out the door, and I didn't see anything else. And that was the first time and only time that I had seen a black mass. Another day I was replacing some of the wood floors. Some of them were pretty bad. So I replaced them and with bare wood, so I was staining them the color to match the other floor in the house. And I got halfway through one hallway and I needed to take a break. So I left the stain can there, my rags, went into the other room and sat down, just drank a Diet Coke, taking about 10 or 15 minute break. When I went back in to start working again, there were small handprints over the wood floor that I had not stained yet. And when I put my hand up to the handprints, it was like that hand could fit inside my hand, so it told me it was probably a child. But I later found out it was a female child. At that point, I just said, "Hey, stop messing with my work." And I even said, "I don't care what you do during the day when I'm working, but just leave me alone at night when I'm trying to sleep." So the main area in the house that I was staying in was a room that I'd turned into my bedroom while I was working on the house. And one evening I was watching TV and I had some books over on a table stacked, and so something over there by the books caught my attention, and I looked over there and it had some papers between the books standing up, and the papers just flew out between the books across the room on the floor. And right after that, the door handle started shaking right next to me, and the door opened up about 4 inches. One day I was in another room and I was working on the fireplace, putting in some bricks, loose bricks, and sitting there, and I had pieces of it looked like drywall. But back then it was plaster, horsehair plaster is what they did the walls with back then. And there was sizes like size of a rock would go flying by me. Like someone threw them at me, but they missed and they just went flying by. And there was nothing in the room, no loose plaster in the room, so it's not like maybe the wind blew it or something like that. They went flying by, and I don't know where they came from, but that's what happened. That happened a couple times. It's like they didn't want me doing what I'm doing, fixing it up. I had a friend that had his own AC HVAC company, and he put in the air conditioning and heating for me in the house, and he hired one employee. And one day he decided he needed some parts, and he left to get the parts, and he came back and his employee was gone, nowhere to be found. So he called the employee up and said, "Well, where are you? You're supposed to be on the job." Well, evidently Something happened to him in the house while the supervisor was gone. Scared him so much, he ran out of the house and never came back. And I asked my friend, I said, well, what did he say happened? He said he wouldn't tell me. He just said he's never going back in that house again. One day I was out on the porch, front porch, and I was painting the front door. It was like a faded red that had been faded for 150 years. So I was repainting the door, and I guess they didn't like that either, that I was changing the color even though I wasn't. Stuff in the kitchen, which was in the other room behind the door, started flying off the shelves, off the counter. Stuff on shelves in the basement were flying off the shelves. And I'm outside painting this door, and I hear all this commotion going on inside. So I stop what I'm doing to go in, and I see stuff everywhere, so I put it back. Now the house had many chimneys, and I sealed all the tops off on the chimney because they could not be used. They'd have to be rebuilt, or it would take a lot of money to reconstruct the chimneys because over the hundreds of years. So I just sealed the tops so bats and birds and rain and snow could not come down the chimney. Plus the wind, the draft would just come right into the room, make it more colder than it was in the winter time. So I completely sealed them off. And one day I heard this banging going on inside one of the fireplaces up in the chimney. It kept on and on and on, loud banging. So I took my phone, turned the camera on, stuck it inside the fireplace, aiming up through the chimney, and snapped a picture. And I'll post a picture of what I saw on here, and you can let me know what you think it is. Is it nothing, or it's just strange because before I sealed them, I could look straight up to the sky. At that time, I had a friend who was an American Indian and very psychic, and they came up to visit the house. And I didn't tell them anything about the house other than I asked if they could just walk through the house and tell me anything that I should know. So my friend walked upstairs, went into the one bedroom, and said, there's a man's presence in here from the 1800s. He doesn't mind me being there. He likes what I'm doing to the place, as long as I take care of it and not destroy it. They then told me there was a young female girl who stays upstairs. It's not allowed to come down, and that she would get in trouble if she came downstairs. They then went to the basement, the place that I got the creepiest feeling in the house. And they said there were slaves that used to stay in the basement, and that one was buried in the basement. And they saw other people surrounding the burial of this lady in the basement. The lady had died giving childbirth, and they didn't want the people to find out about it, so they buried her in the basement. So maybe that was why I was getting the creeps every time I went down there. I eventually sold the house. It was just too much for me to take care of. And the people who bought the house asked me if the house was haunted. And of course I told them it was, at least from what I experienced. So that's the story of the house I lived in that was built in 1797. And I'll add some pictures of the house in this video. And the house was right outside of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And General Custer's troops stayed in that area on his way to the Battle of Gettysburg. So please come along for the next adventure. Please subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you on the next one.